I think one of the points Dr. Nicolantonio made in his book was if you're craving salt, have more.
Yes.
It's your body's not giving you that signal because it's trying to ruin your day. It's trying to tell you something. He would say, a teaspoon or two a day is probably about what we need of the real deal. And you adjust that obviously based on how much you're sweating and exerting and whatnot. But there's something so important about it. And to me, it's intellectually lazy for the medical community to just say salt with no nuance to what different kinds of salts or how the body would use it. It's as lazy as the broad category animal foods, as if they're all the same thing. Or if I said plant foods, I could say vegan soy cheese pizza with, glyphosate sprayed wheat and say that's plant food. Like, so much nuance. We have an organic tomato, or are we talking about that? Like, what are we talking about? Welcome to the Deconstructing Conventional podcast. This interview is brought to you by Healing United, a private membership association committed to helping you reclaim sovereignty over your health, life, and future. You could say our tagline is question everything and rebuild intentionally. In the audio format of the show, there's additional commentary before each episode, and there are also over a dozen audio-only episodes. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the Healing United PMA app. Look for it in the App Store, and if you want to learn more about the work we do, and especially how we help people heal when the doctors have no answers, visit us online at healingunited.today. Now, on with the show. All right, welcome everyone to today's show. My guest is Michael Sileck. He is the Chief Mineral Officer of Sea AgriSolutions, the leader in unrefined ocean minerals. Michael spent his career seeking to improve human health and wellness through product innovations in the areas of nutrition and sleep. And some of his products included kitchenware solutions to make healthier at-home meals, and interestingly, mattress temperature solutions to support deeper and restorative sleep, which may be its own fun episode we have to record in the future. But Michael also has recently helped with the relaunch of C90 Ocean Minerals, supporting healthier food supplies and regenerative agriculture, and the Baja Gold Salt Company, which is the world's healthiest mineral-rich sea salt. And for context, Michael's also a family man. He lives in Georgia with a family of 5. So welcome to the show, Michael. Nice to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. All right. Well, tell me, so you've got quite the interesting background in health and wellness, and of all the places your business skills could be useful, what was it that piqued your interest to be part of the sea salt industry?
Absolutely. So yes, like you mentioned, this does kind of fit with my background. And one of the things that I love that you mentioned there, I'm a family man, and we joined this business as a family. And so one of the large driving factors was actually working with my family. So I work right alongside my brother, with my parents, and with our broader family here on this business. So we actually came together about 5 years ago and tried to find a business that would help do some good for the world and also would allow us to all work in our own different ways. So I, as you mentioned, lead sales and marketing for the business. My brother leads our finance and operations team. And so we all have our different skill sets. And this was a really interesting category, a category that we thought there was a lot of opportunity in, and it allowed us to all work together here in Georgia. And so it was a perfect fit.
Nice. I love that, because I run a family business too, and it's just fun to be doing work you love and doing it with people you love. So it totally makes sense. All right.
100%.
So for context, I guess I always love to give the listener some historical context for whatever it is we talk about on the show. So you're obviously in the salt industry. So give the listener a little background basically on how we humans have used or even valued salt over the millennia.
Absolutely. So I think that salt, we take salt for granted these days, and that's because we've made table salt incredibly convenient and efficient and cheap. But that was not always the case. In fact, salt actually used to be one of the world's most expensive, most valuable items on the planet. And that was because salt was very difficult to create. It was not in abundance the way that it is today. And in fact, it was used in so many different ways, such as food preservation, and various other factors that now we have maybe replaced with modern appliances, refrigeration, etc. And so there's various different ways that salt actually was so valuable. It was used as even forms of payment in some cases because it was so rare and so valuable. In fact, I love sharing this story. Salt actually, in ancient times, it was used as a form of payment, and the word salary, the root of that word sal, actually comes from the Latin for salarium or salt. And so there's such a tie between salt and money and currency and payments and value that is kind of the history of salt there.
Wow. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, part of Rome's history is that they paid some of their soldiers with salt. Is that right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We get maybe where we get the idea that that man is worth or not worth his salt. Like there's something about
Exactly.
salt that we saw as valuable. Okay, so with that background, then give us a little peek behind the curtain of maybe of the modern salt industry. What do we not know? Where does our salt come from? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'll give as much context as I can here, and feel free to jump in. But
Okay.
salt today, there's really three different types of salt, and this will kind of get to the answer of your question. Unrefined sea salt is what Baja Gold and C90 ocean minerals are, and that is sea salt that was created the way that it was in ancient times. So unrefined sea salt, you begin with living, fresh ocean water. You let the sun dehydrate it or dry it out, and you're left with really mineral rich, delicious, unrefined sea salt. Because that process is more time intensive and it just is a larger process, it was rarer in ancient times. You know, it had more value to it. It was not as abundant as it is today. At some point in human history, we also discovered something called earth salt or rock salt. Earth or rock salt occurs when ancient oceans were trapped under or within different tectonic plates and bodies of land, and those oceans would ultimately dry out over time and leave behind a salt deposit. Now, the most famous version of this is going to be pink Himalayan salt in the Pakistan region, where there's very extensive underground salt mines. And so this salt is not quite as healthy as unrefined sea salt. Over the thousands or sometimes millennia of time there, the mineral content has kind of moved in different ways. And in fact, the pink color of pink Himalayan salt is actually because iron from the surrounding earth has actually leached into that product at a higher rate than you would find iron in natural ocean water. So there are some kind of intricacies related to rock salt, but that is another very popular form of salt throughout human history. And then more recently, really within the last probably 100 years or so, we've had what I would call processed table salt. And so there's various different ways through modern engineering and technology that you can take either saline water, ocean water, or unrefined sea salts, or even rock salts, and actually put them through processing to refine them in a way that the color and the mineral content is extremely consistent. And so the mineral content, really what I mean by that is unfortunately just sodium chloride. Those are two minerals, of course, but they are two of over 90 minerals that are found in unrefined sea salt. So again, about 100 years ago, there's this discovery that you can take these starter salts, if you will, refine them, dry them out, process them, potentially add things like anti-caking or flowing agents to them, and create ultimately that little blue canister that we're all familiar with from our pantry, right?
Right.
And so, you know, nowadays you go to the grocery store and a pound of salt is maybe as low as 98 cents. I've seen it. And that would blow the Romans' minds, honestly. I mean,
Right.
that would absolutely stun them. But it's because what we think of today as salt is so dramatically different from what it was thousands and thousands of years ago.
Actually, that's great background. I hadn't really put it into three categories like that, but that's helpful. Okay, so one of the things you sent me to help me prep and study for this interview was the book Sea Energy Agriculture by Dr. Maynard Murray. So I didn't know a lot about that guy or his history, but it's fascinating. So tell us about his work, I guess in the mid 1900s, why kind of his work was lost for a while, what brought it back. Give us some of that history.
Absolutely. Dr. Maynard Murray is really the father of Sea AgriSolutions and the Sea Energy Agriculture movement. So Dr. Maynard Murray was a physician, and in the 40s and 50s, he was dismayed by what he looked at as the declining health of his patients.
Hmm.
He looked around and said, gosh, you know, we're putting people on the moon. We're advancing technologies in automobiles and computers and technology. So all of this progress is happening except in human health. It
Hmm.
seems as though humans are actually getting sicker, again, despite the fact that we're putting rockets in space. And so he said, well, why is that? What is the common thread here that is leading to increases in rates of cancer and other cellular diseases? And ultimately, he started looking at our broader food supply and really agriculture in general. And there were a couple of very helpful studies done. I believe it was the USDA or the FDA, and in combination with our US military as well, where they looked at mineral content and health of citizens at the early 1900s, and then mineral content of our cereal grains, cattle milk and things of that nature in the early 1900s, and then in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And what he saw by going through this data is all of our mineral content in our nation's food supply was dropping. So you'd look at the magnesium content, the potassium content, calcium content in milk and things of that nature. And this is in general what the population is consuming, right? And so he said our health seems to be declining in correlation with our mineral content within our food supply. So that to me, as he's a doctor, he's a scientist, he says there seems to be something here. In addition to that, Dr. Murray was also a traveler. He loved to travel, and he spent a lot of time traveling the world and also spending time on the ocean and with marine biologists. And there was a lot of research done around this time period around what ocean water truly was, what the similarities of ocean water were to actually human blood. And so there were, for the first time, people really started saying ocean water is not just salt water, it's not just sodium chloride and H2O. It's actually over 90 minerals and trace elements, often in a very synergistic balance with one another. And so Dr. Murray said, well, that's interesting. And he started looking more at marine life as well. And it turns out that marine life in general is significantly healthier than land-based life. And what I mean by that is the rate of their cellular degradation over time, the overall health of their populace is much higher than land-based life over time. And there's even been studies done where there's different fish species that can live in both kind of fresh or brackish water and in true salt ocean water. And if you look at those species of fish over time, the ones that live in pure salt water, pure ocean water, live longer lives and have healthier, healthier functioning bodies. And so what he said is, all right, I have all of this incredible information around land-based mineral content, food supply, the health of human beings. Around that time, you have this complete overhaul of the agricultural system in America. And I have all of this data around marine life and minerals in the ocean. And there's one thing I keep coming back to, and it's that minerals are the source of vitality. And so how do I bring these minerals that Dr. Murray speaking here, my hypothesis is used to be on our soil and in our food supply. How do I bring them back into our food supply? And can our oceans be a source of that? And this is a long-winded way of saying he ultimately discovered that you can use ocean water or unrefined sea salts, which are called sea solids, as a fertilizer to remineralize soil and grow healthier food for the human populace.
Yeah, well, essentially, you're remineralizing the human too. Like, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's funny as you're talking, you remind me of years ago, I read a novel. I hardly ever read novels, but I read one called Hawaii by James Michener, a big, thick book. But there was a section that still stands out to me where there's a pineapple plantation, and there's this phase they go through where the pineapples won't grow anymore, and so they bring in botanists, and they're all trying to figure out what's deficient, like why is the soil no longer producing healthy pineapples? And sure enough, it's to your point, there was something about mineral deficiency in the soil, and there was a couple other examples they had, but it's just a novel about history. But it was interesting that they pointed to that as such a critical junction, and like what saved or rescued the agriculture in Hawaii was just getting their soil back to being healthy. So it makes sense that something we have done, and it's funny because you're overlapping with so many themes from other episodes I've done on nutrition, or the work of Dr. Weston Price, who was finding similar things to Dr. Murray, like why is everybody's teeth falling out of their head? What in the world's going on here? And so he's traveling the world as well. I'm like, who's healthy and who's not, and what's different? And sure enough, there's something about the way that our food, and just thinking of the Dust Bowl and the farming practices that we've gone through, and how we have ruined the amount of topsoil in our country. And so it's been fun to go study salt in particular and see it overlap with so many other fascinating topics. But one of the things that stood out from the book, actually there's a couple of things I'll mention, but one that jumped out to me in the book you sent me was just the pictures that he had of the plants they were growing and how different they were when they just replaced the minerals essentially and rehabilitated the soil. The plants grew so much better. So tell the listener a little bit about that.
Yeah, so he did a lot of work both with hydroponics growing and ultimately transitioned that thesis to soil-based growing as well. And yes, you see an improvement in the vitality and the expression of the plant tissue. So the BRICS content, which is the amount of sugar content that's within plant tissue, that's related to how vibrant and full of life the plant tissue is and full of nutrients. The BRICS content goes way up when you use a C90 type of fertilizer. It also helps reduce insect pressure as well as it relates to BRICS. And that's, if you're into farming, you'll kind of understand what I mean. The higher the BRICS content, the insect structure from pests actually can't metabolize that higher sugar content in plant tissue. And so there's all these reasons that when you have high mineralized plant tissue or human tissue, everything is healthier for you. The natural selection of the world is meant to allow you to thrive while taking down those that are maybe mineral deficient. So yes, he saw incredible success with tomatoes, various other vegetables, peppers. And then the awesome thing is that when he started working in wheat fields and with grass and growing in the Great Plains, the cattle would actually self-select the grass that was grown with C90. So animals are a lot smarter than we are, frankly. So if you give them like a choice between good food and bad food, they're going to eat like the healthy, mineral-rich food time and time again. And we have that same reaction from our customers as well. They'll call us and say, yeah, I didn't do this field this year and I can't get my cattle to move into it. Like they won't even go into it. They sit and like hang by the gate where the C90 grass is grown. So all of this it's very just reflective of the mineral richness that once used to be here on the planet. And if you think about ruminants, they used to travel the world, and we're a little off topic, but you talk about bison and various other ruminants that used to travel the world, and you would think, how could these giant structures be supported by just grass? And it's because the grass was so different. I mean, it was so much more mineral rich than what we think of, in a unfortunate feedlot situation or something like that today.
Yeah, but it's fun because it's not irrelevant to human health in any way, because what we're saying is, as the nutrition has diminished within I've been onto this trail for almost 20 years of how much less nutrition there is per bite in our food. And what we're coming back to is we can stop fighting nature and kind of go back to the way nature grows and preserves things. And what you mentioned was just fascinating, is controlling pests with something as simple as getting the mineral balance right. There is just a windfall of health or of abundance that is possible once we get our systems right. We stop fighting nature, start working with it. And it's I can see why this has been harder to break through what we now call conventional agriculture and pesticide or petroleum-based farming, where it doesn't need to be that. So anything else you want to say on that topic before we switch to Baja Gold?
No, I think it's great that you brought up portion control, because it's also related in the agriculture field to yield and things of that nature. And we could talk agriculture for multiple hours and the government role in that and whatnot. But the reality is, when you are so incentivized to grow yield and not necessarily nutrient content,
right,
you start to look at your inputs with an eye towards yield. And like human beings, if you just are eating for quantity over and over and over again, that's not how we're meant to function. And so ultimately the systems will fall down and need to reset themselves. And so it's not about yield. It's about a balance between the right amount of yield, but then also the nutrient density of what you're growing, right? It's not quantity, it's quality over quantity.
Right. Yeah. So well said. I love it. Okay. So tell us a little bit of the backstory of Baja Gold, because that's the other company you're involved in. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Dr. Murray was actually the one who found the location where you get your salts. Is that right?
He did, yes. So Dr. Murray, so he had all this research around sea energy agriculture. And in general, there's some level of similarity between mineral content from ocean to ocean to ocean around the world. Because once he discovered this, he said, okay, can we use any ocean water? Can I just tell someone in Europe, yeah, pull it off of, the North Atlantic? Can I tell someone in Japan to pull it off of the Western Pacific there, or what have you? And so ultimately, he actually found that there are certain different geological factors that help to further increase the mineral content of the sea salts that you are able to dry from a certain ocean source. And so what he was looking for were a handful of different things. One is, you want either a free-flowing or a historically available freshwater source that would create like this estuary environment where you'd have this fresh saline water mixing with or fresh water mixing with the salt water to help reduce the sodium chloride a little bit. Additionally, when you have that freshwater source, you're also typically bringing additional rock minerals from like mountains. And so this is all going to tie back to where we ultimately source our product, which used to have the Colorado River flowing the Rocky Mountain minerals and trace elements into the Sea of Cortez. In addition to that, he also looked for areas where there might be underwater geological, geothermal activity. And so what that looks like is tectonic plates that might be moving and shifting, releasing rare earth elements up into that water supply. And then lastly, he always looked for a source that had consistent temperature and very low humidity so that you could dry your sea solids year round and have a very consistent product for farmers to use. And so he identified 2 or 3 sources of this around the world. And the one that was very readily accessible was actually in Baja California, Mexico, which is that Baja Peninsula on the western part of the North American continent. And all the way up at the northern part of the Sea of Cortez, which is the body of water between the Baja Peninsula and mainland Mexico, in the northwest part of the Sea of Cortez, you have all of these conditions come together. Now, for many thousands of years, the Colorado River would drain into the Sea of Cortez. You have the San Andreas fault line and various other similar tectonic activity occurring underneath that part of the world. And it's a very hot and dry environment so that you can create very mineral-rich sea salts year-round. Now, in addition to that, we also benefit from the Sea of Cortez being a very pristine and pure body of water. It is fully owned by the Mexican government, and they take great pride actually in pretty much ensuring there's no industry or pollution in the Sea of Cortez. I always like to point out the Sea of Cortez is not the Gulf of Mexico. It is a completely different, disconnected body of water. There's no oil activity. There's none of that occurs in the Sea of Cortez. And so because of this, even putting what we do aside, it's a very marine life rich and diverse environment. So Jacques Cousteau actually used to call the Sea of Cortez the world's aquarium because you could go there and see so many different types of marine life, more than any other in the world. It's almost like a marine version of the Galapagos Islands, if you will. And so with all these factors in mind, Dr. Murray, his initial interest was in sea energy agriculture. And so he identified this as the best location in North America for agriculture-based sea solids. And so ultimately, that knowledge was passed on to our founder, Robert Kane, who actually founded Sea Agri in 2003. And then getting to your question here about Baja Gold, about 10 years after a 10-year focus on agriculture, we launched Baja Gold Sea Salt in around 2014. And so we've been doing the Baja Gold human health and wellness side of the business for about a 10-year period now. And Robert loves telling the story of, he had all these farming customers and they would call him every year and say, I love your product. My farm has been remineralized. It's been restored. And I got to tell you, every morning I dig into my 50-pound bag of cattle salt. You can imagine like dusty cattle salt, right? Like on a farm. And I put a little pinch under my tongue and it helps keep me mineralized and hydrated all day. And I try to bring it into the kitchen to cook with. And that doesn't really go over very well. So Robert, you got to help me out. You got to make like a smaller bag that looks like it'll fit in a kitchen. And so after getting pressured for many years on that front, the Baja Gold brand was ultimately born. It's called Baja, of course, because it comes from the Baja Peninsula. And it is functionally very similar to C90. We actually have a dedicated pond so that we know exactly what we're pulling for human consumption. And it goes through a separate clean room process. But in general, it is the same Sea of Cortez ocean water, the same drying process, the same lack of processing and additives that you would have with the C90. So.
Wow, that's fascinating. I remember just reading up and trying to get my head around trying to differentiate your company. And that what stood out to me was the idea the Grand Canyon emptied here. Like a whole 10 miles wide and a mile deep. That's a lot of minerals to be shuttled into one place. And then you have this temperature protection and it just started making sense. There'd be something special about this, but apparently so there's a few things that also stood out to me. The lower sodium content. So you've got on your site, you've got charts of the differences in mineral content, so sodium being part of it, but it's dramatic how different it is from your competitors or from other salts that people could possibly get. And so tell people a little bit about how different it is mineral wise from other salts they might be familiar with.
Sure. So I'll go back to the three different categories that I had mentioned previously, and I'll start with table salt. So table salt, as I mentioned, it's refined and processed purposefully to leave essentially only sodium and chloride. So if you do a mineral analysis on salt, on Morton's table salt, it will be 99% sodium chloride. You'll have very small traces of other things in there, but for the most part, it's virtually 100% sodium chloride. If you think about volume and you kind of go back to elementary school, you can only have 100% of anything, right? So if you have 99% sodium chloride, you have very little room, if you will, for anything else that would be beneficial, such as magnesium or potassium. Rock salt, so that's table salt. Virtually all of your pure white table salt, you'll get at a diner, if you will, the little salt shakers, that is just sodium chloride. Rock salt will have slightly lower sodium chloride and more of those minerals and trace elements because they have not been burned out or dried out or processed out. Rock salt, for the most part, is mined and then bagged. There's not a lot of processing that goes into it, but because rock salt has been potentially drying for thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of years, the mineral content does diminish over time. And so you might be looking at, let's say, roughly 90 to 95% sodium chloride, and you will now begin to pick up traces of magnesium, potassium, zinc. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of iron relative to a typical salt in rock salt. And so it is a healthier choice than table salt because you do have slightly reduced sodium. You have some of these minerals and trace elements, and perhaps most importantly, it's not being processed or having any anti-caking or flowing agents added to it, which we can talk about next. But so the last piece then is going to be unrefined sea salts. So when you have an unrefined sea salt that is truly unrefined, you only dry it with the sun. So you're going to have slight moisture and dampness left over in that product. And that's going to be a sign that you have truly a mineral-rich unrefined sea salt. Several well-known unrefined sea salts, you might think of the word Celtic sea salt. That's a brand that's very popular. They typically are about 82 to 87% sodium chloride, which again leaves more room in the jar for those minerals and trace elements. So you're going to have much higher magnesium and potassium than a rock salt, and certainly more than the zero value that you would get with table salt.
Mm-hmm.
And then Baja Gold, we're very proud of our mineral analysis. And because of where we harvest our product and how we harvest it, we're actually able to have a even lower sodium chloride than what used to be the gold standard, like a Celtic style salt. So we are closer to 75 to 80% sodium chloride, sometimes even below 75%, which leaves significantly more room for magnesium, potassium, all of your macros, and then all of your trace minerals as well. So Baja Gold, about 75% sodium chloride. So that means gram for gram, and I want to talk sodium here in a little bit, but gram for gram, if you are simply looking for a reduction in sodium in your diet, you will have 25% less sodium with a Baja Gold gram of salt versus a table salt gram of salt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, and I wanted to talk some biology with you here too, but I think one thing I heard was just part of, and backing up to something you said earlier, part of what's unique about that area is I think it's so hot. Like there's just really not much population there. Nobody's gonna live there. So you don't have other things, human, whether it's waste or whether it's industry, just getting into the salt. So you really are getting something that kind of just is this unique place around the world. And then you combine it with the freshwater influx from who knows where, the tectonic plates and such. You've got just a salt that's very different. And for those of you who are able to see the little video of this or check out their site, you can see a picture behind Michael of all of the salt flats they have drying out the salt in the sun, and it looks arid. Like there's,
yes,
it's not like, yeah, I want a vacation there. It's
like being on the moon sometimes,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, let's talk biology a little bit and why salt is so needed to the body. Why is it essential? Give the listener some context for how important salt is. What did the Romans know, perhaps?
Sure. So salt is, I like to say, it's the electricity of the body. And sodium in particular. We can start with sodium. Of course, most salts are primarily made up of sodium. And sodium is really important for all facets of human life. Your electricity of your body helps power all of your physical movements and then all of your mental movements as well. So, people often ask, well, if I feel weakness, if I feel dizzy, if I feel like I have a headache or muscle cramps, what do I go to? And there's been a wonderful marketing campaign around the word electrolytes, right? But
Right.
in reality, that is mostly referring to sodium. Sodium, magnesium, and potassium would be like the three key electrolytes. And
Yep.
sodium is the big one. You need sodium to survive. All living things need sodium to power the cells, to ensure the hydration balance with cells occurs properly.
Hmm.
And so we can talk a little bit about kind of why Gatorade is what it is, but all of these hydration formulas, they start with sodium, and that is purposeful.
Yeah.
So it's critical to have a very high quality, appropriately proportioned amount of sodium in your diet and within your hydration habits. And then in addition to that, we always talk about magnesium and potassium as the key other electrolytes for the body. So, they are helping to support energy creation, protein formation, gene maintenance, various other intracellular activities to help support your overall vitality. And then the sodium potassium pump relationship is also critical for hydration as well. And there are a lot of wonderful resources out there on this topic. We work with very well educated doctoral level nutritionists and doctors who can better describe exactly what's going on at a cellular level. But there is significant research supporting the importance of sodium and then also this importance of magnesium and potassium.
Nice. Well, so I teach about salt with some frequency, and one of the things I'll point out to people is you can't make stomach acid without it, like sodium chloride or hydrochloric acid. You need salt in order to produce the acid, which one is disassembles your food so you can get nutrition out of it, but it's also like a way you kill off parasites or any other microbes that may be in your food that shouldn't be there. The acid should be a buffer against that. If you don't have enough salt, you're going to have a hard time with that. And another major piece that gets missed, and we'll get into why the medical community is so averse to it, but salt is extremely important for hydration. If you don't have that, the minerals you're talking about, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, your sea salt has trace amounts of every known mineral we need, right? There's so
Yes.
90, 192, they're all
Yes.
in. So it's an easy way. So people are often surprised that our short list of supplements includes salt, and a good one, because if you don't have salt, there's so many, you're missing minerals and you don't have the ability to hydrate a cell. You can think of cells like a prune, almost like they get dehydrated. And if you don't have the salt to get the water, to have the electrical charge to get it in the cell, you can't actually hydrate the cell. And I think it was the video you sent me from, what's her name? The kind
Barbara O'Neill or
somebody who's teaching about salt and makes the point that our blood pressure is
yes.
tied in. If we don't have enough salt, the body starts increasing the blood pressure to get the water into the cell, and sometimes we're not dehydrated, we're just thirsty, or we're not sick, we're just dehydrated.
Right.
And if we can get
100%.
the
Yeah.
salt, if we can get the water back in the cell, so many of the health problems we have go away. So I guess those are things I'd add from a nutritionist perspective of how important salt is. And to think that there's so many trace elements in one place, it got me excited to think, oh, shoot, this got even easier than I had imagined it to be. So
And what's the number one thing you think of when someone has high blood pressure, right? It's been beaten into our heads for generations now. Oh, they need to have a low salt diet.
right.
And no, it's the exact opposite. For most cases, the exact opposite is true.
Yeah, well, and I want to back you up on that because last year I read, I kind of re-engaged the book, The Salt Fix. I think you've read it too, by Dr. James D. Nicolantonio, I think is his name. And really, to me, it was similar to The Anatomy of an Epidemic. What that book did for the psychiatry industry, this book did to expose the really damning evidence of the agenda behind the current medical recommendations related to salt, and how basically salt, which is critical for good health, along with animal fats and cholesterol, was vilified in order to keep sugar from receiving any of the blame for America's worsening health statistics. So help me with this one here, Michael, because I'll have people they've kind of been in the medical trance, or they've been hearing their doctors telling them you got to reduce your salt if you're going to stay healthy. And so help the listener understand maybe what the doctor doesn't know. And it may be as much about the Mortons or the how much minerals and salt. So give the listener some context to maybe expand their thinking or push back against doctor's advice just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's two things. It is what you were alluding to, the type of salt that we're talking about. The type of salt that you're consuming is absolutely critical. I firmly believe if everyone could wave a magic wand and the source of all of the salt in all of your food is now unrefined sea salt, they will instantly they will be healthier, period,
Yeah.
full stop. Their hydration will improve, their vitality will improve, their energy levels will improve. And at a cellular level, we believe that those trace minerals, in the animal world, they often ask me, I've heard of 10 minerals. Why do I need 90 minerals? Tell me why mineral number 47 is such an important mineral for me. And I'll say, look, there might not be 15 papers that tell you exactly why mineral 47 is so critical, but frankly, it was put here for a reason. And we've demonstrated that when living things have access to the full spectrum of minerals, there are certain conditions or factors within the cell that become healed or become more expressive. And so it's not necessarily about being able to point to a specific one. It's just the totality of giving cells all of the different building blocks and tools that are naturally present in our world for them to thrive. So switch all of your salt over to a Baja Gold or even a Celtic sea salt, an unrefined sea salt that has all of the minerals and trace elements and has naturally reduced sodium chloride will go a long way. I think what is also happening here is that a reduction, a quote unquote reduction in salt is also code for a reduction in processed and unhealthy foods, frankly, because one of the simplest things you can look at is perhaps the sodium level in some of these prepackaged, pre-processed foods and say, okay, my doctor told me I need less salt. Forget about don't have frozen dinners. Like that might strike people the wrong way, right? But if you're at a grocery store and you start looking at frozen dinners and saying, okay, all of these are high in salt, the only thing I can eat that is lower in salt is fresh, healthy foods, then there's almost this like you're kind of guiding them in the right direction using something that is easier to follow than a broad, don't eat processed foods, don't eat frozen foods, don't do this, and this, just reduce your sodium. And then it becomes okay, I can do that through this, and this, if that makes sense. So I think that's what's going on there. And, I think it's those two things. It's use the right type of salt and then just be mindful of your entire diet and everything that it is you're consuming. And you will inherently become healthier and more energetic and just better off.
Yeah, no, I like that. There's just an elegant simplicity of trusting that we don't have to have a study that says, here's 100 studies on every mineral we could possibly find and why your body needs it. I remember when I was getting my nutrition degree, I was looking at this and thinking, we had to memorize every single nutrient, vitamin, and be able to demonstrate and tell what it did for the body. And I kind of pushed back and looked at that. I'm like, so we need all of them. And even more, they all need each other because some of them don't work without the other ones. And so it became this infinitely complex, impossible calculus to try to figure out what somebody might be deficient in and go find the thing. And so much easier, like, oh, just have salt that has all of it and let your body sort it out. It's like, okay, that I can get behind. And now to know that yours has this much nutrition in such a small, easy to consume. I think one of the points Dr. Nick Lantanio made in his book was if you're craving salt, have more. Yes. It's your body's not giving you that signal because it's trying to ruin your day. It's trying to tell you something. He would say, a teaspoon or two a day is probably about what we need of the real deal. And you adjust that obviously based on how much you're sweating and exerting and whatnot. But there's something so important about it. And to me, it's intellectually lazy for the medical community to just say salt with no nuance to what different kinds of salts or how the body would use it. It's as lazy as the broad category animal foods, as if they're all the same thing. Or if I said plant foods, I could say vegan soy cheese pizza with, glyphosate sprayed wheat and say that's plant food. Like, that's so much nuance. Like, we have an organic tomato, or are we talking about that? Like, what are we talking about? So just recognize.
Well, even fats, right? I mean,
right.
all fat is bad. It's like,
right.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Low fat diet. Like, no, you're right. It's animal food. It's fat. It's cholesterol. It's just, they throw these terms out with out nuance, but with an ivory tower, we have figured it out for you kind of aura. And we miss so much of the nuance and where the truth is or what has been left out of the conversation. So I'm delighted that you're here to help bring in some more of this nuance or help people maybe not be afraid of salt and boost their health with one of the simplest things they can possibly do. So thank
Yes.
you for helping me with that one. Okay. So tell people, I guess we kind of covered it, but when people hear table salt, or where they hear Morton's sea, not Morton's, they hear the Morton's, the table salt, the stuff that, like you mentioned, the umbrella with the blue bottle or the cardboard thing that you pour white salt out of. What I've heard different people say that's actually toxic. And Sally Fallon was one of them. Like, so help people understand why it's not just that salt is good or bad. It's that this highly refined only sodium chloride salt is actually bad for you. I've got a quote from the Sea Energy book I want to read, but give people a little more context of why that is so unhealthy for people.
So I think it comes down to the balance of the minerals that are naturally meant to be consumed by living things.
Mhm.
And so if you go back to where can you find salt on the planet? Naturally, salt will be created in unrefined sea salt ponds that, you don't have to build the ones behind me. You can naturally have that kind of form.
Mhm.
That was used by, all the way back to the Romans and before then. And even earth salt to an extent is naturally available. There are not many sources, if any, that I'm aware of that are naturally occurring Morton style salt.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a kind of a tip off, right? To say, well, if you have to process something to really make it this specific way, and you're doing it largely for commercial reasons, you're doing it largely for economic simplicity, efficiency of use, and various other things, that I think that's just a tip off to say, well, maybe we weren't meant to consume this. And so when you fully switch over from a naturally occurring mineral rich sea salt to just a standard table salt, your body is going to go through a little bit of like, well, this is kind of weird. I maybe need more because I'm trying to get some magnesium that I'm used to getting from salt, and it's not here. It's not here. I need more. I need more. And then certain cellular functions that rely on the work between the minerals, as you mentioned, they begin to slow down or shut down because those other complementary minerals aren't available for you. In addition to that, and I don't want there's many different ways to make table salt. There's vacuum drying, there's kiln drying, there's various other brine production techniques, and there are various different anti-caking and flowing agents. All I know is those things are largely not naturally occurring. And in some cases, they are built on elements that we would say you really want to limit your consumption of. And so some of them are aluminum based and various other minerals and trace elements based, that are really not the good minerals and trace elements. And so that might be what Sally is referring to there. You
Mhm.
really just want to be mindful of consuming so much of an unnaturally occurring processed ingredient, or if you will. And so salt is one of the, by volume, one of the largest things the human body consumes every day, right? So if you're going to transition that from a naturally occurring unrefined mineral rich sea salt to something that is man-made in a lab with other various additives, you can't expect your body to not kind of throw up a red flag and say, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah, let's say we kind of commoditized it or pharma'd it, if I can turn
Yes.
pharma into a verb. We've taken the idea, like there's this one thing, it's great, so let's make a lot of it and concentrate it, and then we'll turn that into something we can make a lot of money on. And to recognize that there's this paragraph that jumped out to me, or a couple of cents or two, in the book you sent, the Sea Energy Agriculture, and it was talking about this specifically. It said, as is well known, sodium chloride is used universally as table salt in the inorganic form. Equally as well known in the scientific community is the fact that that an excessive amount, such as 4 or 5 teaspoons of table salt, ingested at one time, is potentially lethal to human life. And the use of salt was a recognized method of committing suicide practiced by the Chinese in ancient times.
Yeah. Wow.
Which,
Yeah.
like, if you think about that, okay, the takeaway here, hopefully the listeners are getting from the last few minutes, is that stuff on the table at the restaurant, don't touch it. That you don't need to sprinkle a little bit of poison on your food. If your doctor's telling you to stay away from salt, that's what he's in his best mind is telling you to stay away from. And but there's a difference between that and real sea salt. So anyway, that to me was at least something that I thought was worth having on the record for people when in the salt conversation, so that we can stop being afraid of it and realize, yep, that stuff is what we stay away from, and the real deal is just something we crave and need for many good reasons. So, anything to add to that?
No, we've done trials on the agriculture and gardening side as well that actually back this up. So we've done potted plant trials, essentially where you take, a specific amount, I forget if it was a teaspoon or a tablespoon of C90, and you fertilize the soil with that, and sodium chloride, more, I forget if it was Morton's or some other brand, but just table salt. And the plant that the C90 was used on, it's flourishing, it's vibrant, it looks great. The other one, it's dying, and
Yeah.
it's just dying in front of your eyes. And so, we did that early on, and I said, wow, this is the trial to show people this is the difference right here, because we get a lot of questions on C90, as you can imagine, of, wait, you want me to spread salt on my land here? Like,
Right.
but that's the difference. It's the minerals versus something that has the minerals purposely removed from it.
Right. Okay. Well, another thing that's been making the rounds lately in the health realm is the Mamavation article on salts and heavy metal content. So supposedly they did a gigantic study in testing out as many salts as they could find to figure out how much toxicity may be in these. And I'm at this point now in studying toxins for as long as I have, that you can find trace amounts of toxins or heavy metals or plastics or pesticides or glyphosate in just about everything. But tell us a little bit about, I know you're familiar with that article. So what the Mamavation article basically listed kind of good, better, and best in terms of salts they'd recommend and how much heavy metal they did or didn't find in different salts. So tell us, in your estimation, what did the article get right? What did it get wrong? And maybe tell us some about the testing that your products have undergone.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I want to say that our team and our family takes the quality and purity and safety of our products very seriously. So I have 3 little kids as well. We enjoy Baja Gold every single day, and I extend that scrutiny to my work as well. And so we do, as you mentioned, a significant amount of third-party testing that I can get to in a moment. I also want to say, I think it's great that there's what I would call independent journalism around these types of things. Frankly, we need to be testing and scrutinizing the food that we ingest more. We should be doing that. That's a good thing. And I'm glad that these types of tests are available and they're economically possible to put out a study like this. When you look at an unrefined sea salt, when we say all of Earth's minerals and trace elements are included in it, that truly means all of Earth's minerals and trace elements. And so there will be what we would call ultra trace levels of some of the heavy metals or light metals, as they are described. And those, primarily people think of lead and arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and then aluminum is another one as well. So we have tested our products with heavy metal testing as well. That number that is in that test is a little higher than our typical average. We typically see about 100 to 200 parts per billion of lead in that relative to their test. What we believe is that this is a naturally occurring product with natural organic elemental forms. As you mentioned, there is heavy metals in our soil. They are naturally inherent to all truly naturally occurring things. In fact, there are different types of root vegetables and various other fruits and vegetables that have higher than this levels of heavy metals in them naturally. It's also very important to look at the absolute quantities that we're talking about and not look at what are ultimately percentages of a percentage. A parts per billion, which is what the study is referencing, is an extremely, extremely small amount. And when you frame it as 300 parts per billion, it sounds a lot bigger than in practice it truly is. So with all of that said, we believe that our products are incredibly safe. They are safe for appropriate levels of consumption. And we appreciate the testing that is done. We actually, for many, many years prior to this study, have been posting heavy metal and other test results on our website for public review. We put the actual PDF from the companies on our website. We have glyphosate testing on there, pesticide testing on there, microplastics testing, heavy metals, mineral composition reports. It's all there. And so when we received this test, we actually said, okay, we will add it to our library because we post all of these on there for people. What I will say is, so if you believe everything we've been talking about with unrefined sea salts and rock salts having more minerals and trace elements and therefore being a healthier form of salt for you, we struggle with the conclusion that the article reached, which is the best salts are going to be processed table salts.
Right.
If you go through that list, it was, you walk down your grocery aisle, Morton's, private label sea salt, private label table salt, and that just fundamentally doesn't agree with everything we've just been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The key point they're making there is that those, because they are processed, don't include any heavy metals, and therefore they are healthier than everything else. And while heavy metals are important to monitor, absolutely, I'm not saying that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger picture around mineral intake and source of sodium, I think, is missed by that conclusion.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. When I saw the article and then I saw Morton sea salt or Morton salt rather, the stuff we're talking about that's pure sodium chloride listed on the best category. I'm like, the only way that could possibly be in the best is strictly through the lens of heavy metals because it's toxic to the body in the way it's made. So to put that on the best list just made me scratch my head of like there's a I don't know if it's an agenda, but it's just a particular lens of looking at this. If you're only looking at heavy metals, and to your point, it's not like heavy metals are somehow like delivered by alien spaceship. They're here on the Earth all the time, and they're all over, and they're in trace amounts. And heavy metals come from the jet exhaust that flies over our head every day, and glyphosate's in the rain. So we're not going to go back to the days of none of these chemicals. But what I appreciate about something like a Baja Gold or Celtic sea salt, where there's this many minerals, is that you're giving the body the resources to handle the toxicity. It can say we have the ability to run the functions that do open the detox pathways, whereas overloading your body with a poison called Morton's table salt or restaurant salt is probably doing more harm, even though it's lower in heavy metals, perhaps, than just getting a food form the way nature packaged it, salt. And anyway, so those are my comments or things I observed about that as well. Anything you would add to that?
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think there's a bigger picture view on this that unfortunately wasn't included in that article. We don't dispute the results. We test way more frequently and publicly post them, and that's a point of pride, not necessarily the results, but that mindset is a point of pride for our business.
Yeah, and I looked over your tests, and it looks remarkable how little toxicity there is in the product. So bravo and well done. Okay, so tell people like a couple of just random questions that came to. What are your thoughts on Dead Sea salt? Because I see people praise it, and other people are like, "Oh my gosh, stay away from Dead Sea salt. It's a dead sea." So, what are your thoughts on that as a salt product?
So my understanding of Dead Sea salt is it is beneficial for skin conditions.
Mhm.
It is actually virtually impossible to consume it because of how bitter it is. So Dead Sea salt, because of geological factors over time, its sodium to mineral content it's almost reversed. It's incredibly low in sodium. It's very, very high in magnesium and barium and maybe one or two other minerals that I have to check my notes on. But if people have said you put a grain on your tongue and you're like, whoa, like, so it's not for consumption, it's not for wellness in that sense. I do believe it can help with psoriasis and perhaps eczema, but that would be kind of a different conversation. So if you're looking for it for skincare, I do some research into it. I don't believe it's used for culinary or wellness purposes.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I've actually been to the Dead Sea, and it's remarkable. My roommate that I was with at the time made the mistake of shaving his face before
Oh boy.
he had to get out. It's like it's the weirdest salt because you literally can't sink in it. It's so salty. But okay, so that's that one. One other thing I wondered, what's your maybe personally the way you use it in terms of family or related to food? Do you recommend people buy foods that are unsalted and just add salt, or are there like what might we look for so that if there's salt added to food products we are purchasing, how would we know that it's not straight Morton sodium chloride, or is it just safer and best to go with no salt added to everything and then add it ourselves?
Yeah, so great question. So I think in terms of the last part of that, there is now becoming more aware. There's more awareness around different types of salt, and so what we're starting to see is that certain food products will actually call out the type of salt that they're using. And so
Okay.
this is still somewhat small, but it is more than it has ever been before. And so if you can find, if you're buying packaged food or whatnot that says the salt source is, Celtic sea salt or unrefined sea salt or Baja Gold sea salt, or even one of our main competitors is Redmond Real Salt. And I know they have a lot of different partners in that sense. So like Carnivore Snacks, I think actually uses Redmond Real Salt on their product. So look at the label and see if you can identify it. If they do call that out, then that's great. That probably actually says a lot about their general thoughts on health and wellness.
Hmm.
And then, for salted versus unsalted food, I think it just goes back to looking at the label and really understanding, because it's easy for me to say buy it unsalted and salt it yourself. But if they are using salt as I'll call it a natural preservative, and the unsalted version now has some other ingredient that you can't pronounce the name of to keep it preserved, that's
Right.
a net negative. And so
Yeah.
it really just depends. I would just recommend taking a look at the label. Of course, in any instance where you can, on a one-for-one basis, swap out regular salt for Baja Gold or an unrefined sea salt, absolutely do that. When we try to buy, like a bag of like cashews or something, we will definitely buy the unsalted version because there's nothing else really hiding in that.
Hmm.
But I would just say, it's the same thing with a low sodium diet. Well, what are they really telling you to do? What's kind of behind the curtain on that? Really look at the ingredients and the labels, versus just saying buy the unsalted one 100% of the time.
Got it. Okay. No, that's a good nuance. I appreciate the guidelines there. Okay. So tell people about your product line. We'll start to wrap up here because I was surprised how many different things you guys have figured out or packaged relative to using salt. So give people a sense of some of the products that you guys sell.
Sure. So Baja Gold Salt Co. So our hero products, of course, are our mineral sea salts. So we have a mineral sea salt. We harvest it, and in one instance, we actually just package it. We call that natural grain crystals. We have that available in a 1 pound, 5 pound, 25 pound bag. Then for someone who's wanting something a little bit finer, we mill the salt and call it fine grind. And so that's like a flour texture. So you have a couple of different what we call grain sizes to choose from. It's ultimately the same mineral sea salt that we've been talking about here, has that same incredible mineral and trace element profile and balance relative to sodium chloride. The second product that we offer is our liquid ocean minerals. So if you're really into health and wellness, you probably heard of something called Soleil water. And so for about several generations now, people have been creating this mineral rich water that's called Soleil water. And previously what you would do is you would take a mason jar, fill it with high quality salt, either pink salt or Celtic back in the day, or even Baja Gold now, and you would keep filling it with you would fill it up with water and let the salt absorb into the water overnight. And ultimately you'd be able to create this Soleil water that is 5 or 10 times concentrated ocean water, essentially. And you would spoon that. You could take it under your tongue as a tincture, or you could spoon that into your water throughout the day for improvements in hydration. It's almost like a more natural version of like a Gatorade. And so what we have done now with our liquid ocean minerals is actually pre-concentrated and produce that Soleil liquid for you. So we offer a 4 ounce tincture bottle. It's just mineral sea salt and distilled water and concentrated down. So if you're looking for something to take as a morning tincture, or if you want just a liquid, it's great as an oral cleanse, as like a saline solution replacement. Or if you're looking to, supplement with like a brine solution or something like that, it's just a liquid concentrated version of our mineral sea salt. So those are our two most popular products. We also offer an ocean mineral soak. It's interesting you mentioned Dead Sea salt. We've actually found that using Baja Gold as a mineral soak can actually be very beneficial for the body as well. And so
Hmm.
for that product, what we've done is actually blended it with an Epsom salt. So of course people will be familiar with Epsom salt. It's just magnesium sulfate. And so it doesn't have all of the minerals and trace elements in it. It's a very good product, but it doesn't have all of the minerals and trace elements in it. So what we do is by blending Baja Gold into it, you get that added kick of the magnesium sulfate now paired with all 90 minerals and trace elements. So it's an incredible muscle rejuvenator. It's a relaxant. If you take a
Hmm.
bath before bed, it has all that magnesium, which is really going to help you reach deep sleep.
Hmm.
And so that's a product that we offer. And then we have something called Ocean Power Sport as well. That is our liquid ocean minerals, but in convenient form factors for sport use. So Yeah, so that's our kind of product line. Everything we do is built on our mineral sea salt, and that's the genesis of why we're here, and that's the core of all of our products.
Yeah, which are great. I mean, I've got several of them, and it's been fun to use them. Whether like simple like Charlie horse or foot cramp at night, like just gone. Like, oh, I was deficient in a few electrolytes. Or we've had really good success having people do detox baths and getting things out of their skin rashes going away and other things just simply from a good healthy bath where you get the salts to do their magic, and you just there's not many things that are simpler than just add some salt. Like,
Yes.
so yeah, but no more Gatorades or electrolyte drinks that you need. You just have some of that liquid ocean minerals, and you've got all the minerals, and you've got your salt balance. So I've just, it's been a delight to have them. And then a salt grinder, realizing, oh, this is real salt. Like it should be like pepper. You'd grind it and you'd put it on your food. So fantastic products. I definitely recommend them. And anything else we did not cover that you want to make sure we get in there?
No, I really enjoy the conversation. I'd love to come back and talk C90 and agriculture. I think the root of human health is in the root of soil health, and so I'd love to kind of untangle that thread. But no, I appreciate the time today. If anyone has any questions, you can find us at BajaGoldSaltCo.com, or just search for Baja Gold, and you'll probably get there. We're also on various different social media platforms as well. So
Right on. Okay, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time today. It has been fun.
thank you, sir.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Deconstructing Conventional. If this conversation sparked new questions or helped you see things in a new light, feel free to share it with a friend who is on a similar journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and a perspective that challenges the norm. Check us out on our website at healingunited.today and find us on social media at Healing United, or you can check out the Healing United PMA app. It's a great way to stay connected. Remember, question everything and rebuild intentionally.